I guess the question is, do we have audio?
I hear you.
There we go. Well, I guess in 2020, if we don't know how to use Zoom by the time 2020 is over, we've failed.
I guess so. You know, it doesn't always go. I think it was my son who actually taught me, who used it the first time. I'd heard of it vaguely, and he said, "Oh, never mind Skype, Zoom." He also had some German version for a while. Anyway.
Yeah. So to kick this off, since we've actually, I mean, we've chatted over email, and of course we've spoken on the phone a few times, but so I'll kick off by introducing myself, Dan Lynch here in Connecticut, and I'll let you do the intros for yourself.
Stan Shatenstein in Montreal.
And so Stan, I thought it would be a lot of fun given, you know, the many messages we've shared, and I think it's I don't know, it's been a long time, probably 1,000 days or so since we actually met in person and shook hands down in Alexandria for the first and only time in person. But today, the reason for this call, and I thought I'd share at some point somewhere with others, is that today Stan and I share a somewhat interesting distinction in the world of indoor rowing, and that we both share now the distinction of having rowed for 1,048 consecutive days. Of course, me chasing Stan for a good bit of that time. But Stan, if you don't mind, you know, would you spend a few minutes just kind of sharing your initial quest and kind of what led up to yours? I know all the questions I get asked, and I thought it would be fun, you know, together to hear first from you, and then you know, I'll kind of tack my story on the end, and we'll kind of go from there.
I think it was kind of accidental. You know, my background is mostly as a runner, sort of cycling first, then running, then rowing. Those have been sort of the three main ones, overlapping back and forth. And in running, I was never focused really on streaking, typically 4 to 6 days a week. Sometimes it got longer. And at one point I got a full year, actually a 405-day streak. It was the last 20 days of 1 year. I did a full year, and then 20 days after that to bookend it. And I stopped it voluntarily because it wasn't really my thing, but it was nice to get the full calendar year. And so I think when just naturally I found myself not missing any days and not traveling, it probably was when I got to around 800. Whereas I've been at this for quite a long time, and I think then the number 1,000 hove into view and became tempting. And again, there had been, you know, not a chance to travel. I used to go to more conferences for work, and nothing had really come up, so getting in the way. Obviously, a rowing streak on the erg is not as easy to sustain as a running streak where you can maybe run in an airport. So I kept going, and definitely once I was past 800 or so, it became quite tempting to try to get to the 1,000. And then I, at some point, made plans. My son he's been in Germany, Switzerland, and back in Germany, and finally made plans to visit him and a good friend in Spain. And so that brought me up to the 1048 end date. It ended for travel, not illness or injury, but that was the basic story.
Yeah. Now, you know, it's interesting. I didn't realize. Yeah, I mean, I had spent decades as a runner and a cyclist as well. And in the world of running now, you probably know better than I, but there's a society. I think it's called, and they have a website. Is it what, runeveryday.org or something like that?
I think there is something called that, but I'm actually on a Facebook page. I think it's called Run Streak International or something like that. I have to check it. And basically, if you have a year-long streak, you make their list. So it's mostly American, US, Canadians are Americans too. But I'm on the international list because I did have I made it past the full year before stopping.
Yeah, and that society, I think there's a formal society of some sort. I remember looking it up a couple of years back and being absolutely blown away to learn, first of all, you can't even get in unless you've streaked for at least a full year, my understanding is. But then there are quite a number of people who have done more than 50 years, every day for 50 years. And I think, if I remember it correctly, the record is something like 54 years. And then the gentleman who had the record, I think, died or something. I mean, do you know much of the detail of that, or?
I actually had in mind more many streaks in the 40s. I'm sure you're right that there's somebody or a few people over 50. I think that's really rarefied air. The one I know best is actually, a lot of them are just regular everyday runners, guys who started, basically if you started college, if you started 18.
Yeah, high school or college, yeah.
If you started 18, you end up at Dan Lynch's age and you've got a 40-year streak,
Right.
So a 50-year streak by your late 60s that some of us are approaching. And but Ron Hill, who was a great British international runner, he had a streak that went well over 40 years. I don't think he got to 50, and he had some health issues and had to stop. So there are some guys, I've read a handful of stories that are quite extraordinary. So yeah.
Well, here's a couple of things that are interesting. I mean, you and I have exchanged a number of emails, over the last, year or two or whatever it's been, about just kind of what I'll say bizarre coincidences of sorts, But, today, of course, today's Friday, the 13th of November in 2020. But it just so happens that tomorrow, the 14th of November, is actually the 3-year anniversary exactly of the day that I joined the Concept 2 logbook group on Facebook. And, I mean, I had been rowing and I had been erging for a couple of years. I mean, I'm 58 now. I started, rowing when I was 53, and I didn't have what I'll say, kind of regular access to an erg for about a year beyond that. But really one of the things that changed the game for me, well, of course, getting my own erg for one thing, but I don't know what one day I was on Facebook, which I kind of have a love-hate relationship with social media in general, but I jumped on Facebook and found and joined the Concept 2 logbook group. Now, I don't remember exactly, there's a few thousand members of that group. But it was probably only within a month of me joining. And you'll of course know the date, because it was when I read, shortly after joining, I remember reading your post of your 1,000 day celebration and you doing your 100,000 meter row. What was the date on that? Do you recall that date, or?
Absolutely. There's a personal coincidence. It was a significant family date just by chance. It was December 16th, 2017. So that would be just over a month. Now, is it okay? I can reveal, of course, you're talking about a coincidence in terms of tomorrow's date, but to me, a major coincidence in today's date, right?
Well, there's many coincidences, but I think, and that's what first kind of what I'll say put you on my radar screen in terms of, I mean, you were just one of the many people. I think back now to that joining that Facebook group really was a game changer for me in terms of the motivation that I started to get from reading about first you, and then learning that there were others. And then I learned about, of course, the various people who did tandem rows or team rows, some of the really long ultra, the 50Ks, the 100K sessions. By that point, I had already done a full marathon, which, to me, I mean, I was just curious. So I kind of went out and I did one day. Now I had run a couple marathons, but to row one was kind of like a whole nother challenge to me. And I could only dream to run the times that I rode, because when I did my first one on the rower, it was a couple minutes shy of 3 hours. So it was whatever, 2:57 or 2:58. And I thought, man, I wish I could run it this fast. But so what were the other coincidences that I mean, we've had many between us, but what were the other ones that you were talking about?
Well, the big one today is that you have reached 1,048, which was where my streak ended.
Oh, right, of course.
And I hit day 1,000 for the second time today.
Right.
I'm 48 days behind you, and not trying to catch you, trying to see how big a record you can set. But that I thought was quite a coincidence. And,
Yeah, it is
and
certainly.
just in a nice personal number for me, because 1048, which I really never thought I would approach again, but obviously having hit 1000, I'm approaching it. It's just a nice, neat thing. If all goes well, day 1048 for me is December 31st. So I tie my personal record to end the year, and I would break my personal record 1/1/21, January 1st. So that's got a nice sound to it for me.
Wow. Yeah, these things are fun. I mean, like I say, I think back to December of 2017, and when I first read about not only your 1000th day, but the fact that you commemorated your 1000th day with the 100,000 meter row, and that remains to be one of the things that I want to pursue, and at some point will pursue trying to do the 100,000 meter challenge. Uh, you know, I mean, it's something that's not to be taken lightly, certainly. But I remember reading about it, and then of course searched around and read about others who had done it, and thought like, wow, But and then I think I reached out to you on email or something, or maybe a messenger or whatever it was, and started to really think about the logistics involved. And then of course, just what I'll say, life challenges. Whether you get sick or whatever it is that you travel, your work obligations, family obligations, and I remember thinking, I have to give it a try. Like my initial thought wasn't, hey, I think I want to try to do 1,000 days. It really was, I want to see if I can get through a month, and have what it takes to really just be focused enough to get through a month. And in the back of my mind, I did kind of have the thought about 1,000 days because, the 1,000 days was special to me because my two daughters were born exactly 1,000 days apart. And I've always been kind of a numbers guy. And so I thought, oh, this would be kind of fun to try to do it. And once I got past a month, and then it was 2 months, and then of course several months, and then of course you get to 100 days. Then it was only then that I started thinking about the, what I'll say, a legitimate streak. And I don't remember what point in the game, we were in more regular contact, but certainly things changed for me when, unfortunately, I think about a lot of the milestones along the way. And I remember for me, my streak day 334, was the day that I first got some medical news, which ultimately led to, a very surprise diagnosis of a rare form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And, I mean, I'll not get too emotional about it, but as crazy as it sounds, I remember one of the first things I thought about when they said I had to have surgery. I thought, damn, my streak's gonna end. And
well, how did you manage that through surgery?
well, and so that's where the whole concept of the logistics involved, really the logistical challenges. And many people have asked me the question, and I say, logistical challenges really was more of a challenge, if you will, than the physical or mental challenges at times, because I thought, okay, I gotta have a couple of lymph nodes removed out of my groin. Not great for a rower, in terms of the spot, the location. And it was called the right inguinal canal, where I had a hernia from several years earlier. And I thought, oh, this ain't gonna be good. So what I actually did was, the day of the surgery, I waited. I think it might have been on a Monday. That surgery was, I think, on a Monday, but I do remember clearly the night before, I stayed up past midnight so that it was just a few minutes into the new day. And I did my self-imposed minimum for my streak. I had, from the very beginning, for whatever reason, I knew that the Olympic distance for races, is 2,000 meters. I thought, well, I want to go a little bit beyond that. So I had always set for myself, my minimum day would be 2,500 meters at minimum, and a 10-minute minimum time. They generally were about the same for me, on a day where I was only going to do a minimum. And that would be to kind of force myself to make sure to go hard on a day where I only had a little time. And so what I did was I waited till after midnight and said, okay, I sat on the rower. I did my, 10, 12 minutes or whatever it was. I got my row in for the day. I could check the box and know that I did the day. Then I went to sleep, got up, of course, had to drive to the hospital. It was, about an hour's drive for me. And I got there, I had the surgery very early in the morning, like, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 or something. And it was anesthesia and all that. And then I actually couldn't drive myself home because of that. And so even though I drove myself, my car was still there. And then I had somebody pick me up and ultimately drive me home. But what I was able to do, since that day was already done, I didn't have to worry about it. And then I waited until like 11 o'clock the following evening. So at least I had a little bit of a recovery. Certainly I still had stitches, and I'm sure that the doctors wouldn't have wanted me to row if I had asked permission. So what I just simply did was waited until, about 11 p.m. the following evening. And of course I had an hour left to the day, and I wasn't going to do anything stupid. And that's where I learned that some days arms only rowing is good enough. And I sat there and I did 2,500 meters. In fact, all joking aside, I think it was about 2 weeks that I was restricted to arms only rowing for about 2 weeks, because the incision and the surgical site, it was a tough location. There was no using your legs. There was no abdomen. And I learned the challenge of having watched para rowers compete at the Crash Beezer things. I learned, like, wow, arms only rowing is tough.
I have to ask you, what kind of pace could you manage when you're doing the arms only?
When I did arms only, well, that's funny you asked that too, because that kind of became a little bit of a game. Like the first day, I literally just did it to do it. I had no concept of time, and I was more focused on making sure that my body wasn't going to rock at all. I didn't want any movement in my abdomen, and there was no effort for time. I just said, let me see 2,500 meters on the screen. I generally, something like that, I sit down and do it as a just row. I don't program it for 2,500 meters. And I just rowed until I got to 2,500 meters. But then I noticed that as a couple of days started ticking by, and I kept saying, okay, I had the tendency, I think, competitive, the whole me against me concept. I think the first day might have been like, I'd have to look back. I think it was like 18 minutes. But then it was like, oh, I could beat that. And then the third day, the fourth day. So by the end, I got to the point where I think I was down like around 13 minutes of just arms only. But let me tell you, it was really just really pulling, on the chain, trying to get some speed up on that flywheel.
Well, you're a strong athlete. That's very fast for arms only. It's funny, that you mentioned, you had told me before about the 2,500, and I had in my mind, independent of you, as obviously I got to 1,000 days long before you did the first time, and I had in my mind that would be the minimum. On the first streak, my 10:48 streak that ended in February 2018, I'm quite certain I never went below 4,000 meters, but I decided that 2,500 was acceptable. And on this streak, I think there were 2 days. Once I was fine after I've done 2 marathons this season, and I was fine after both, but I think one of them, I did something hard the next day on the bike, and the second day after the marathon, I said, no, 2,500 meters is fine. I've done it, it's definitely official. It's 12 minutes, not fast pace or whatever. So that definitely counted. And it also makes it a little bit similar time-wise to the runners with their 1 mile being the minimum. And also in my initial thinking about it was that my rowing goes back long enough. I'm sure you know this, that the Olympic distance has been, I think, forever 2,000 meters. But when Concept 2 was introduced, the race distance was 2,500 meters.
Right, yeah. The Crash Bees used to be 2,500 meters.
Correct, and they debated for a couple of years. It was around when I was coming into the sport, because I had a period where I rode, I'm not sure if I told you this, I think so, but in the early 90s, I bought a Model B. I'd seen it and used it in the gym and liked it, and I bought one, but I still was mainly a runner. It was in the heart of my marathon running days. And I used it for a while as an adjunct to my running, but I stopped using it in 95 and only came back in 2010. But the point is that around when I started, certainly in the early 90s, and I did a few races, my PB is at 2,500 meters, because I had this long gap, and by the time the gap ended, I was 15 years older at least, and therefore I was no longer breaking 7 minutes, but I used to row routinely in the 640s, 650s, holding on to 2,500 meters. So, my PB is unofficial based on meter times. but all that digression to say that it made the 2,500 meters sound like a good number as a respectable minimum for a daily row. Never used on the first streak, used I think twice on this streak, and that's fine.
Do you happen to recall, in a general sense, when during your initial 1,048-day streak, do you recall what your kind of over the whole duration, what your average meters per day was? Wasn't yours like up around the 10K zone, somewhere around 10K a day, or?
I don't think so. I have a document with it because it actually came out to quite an even number. I made it come out a little bit more even. I'm tempted. I could open it fairly quickly, but I don't think it was as high as 10. But it might not have. Actually, it might not have been far off. Wait a second, because let's see. 50K a week is 7K a day. It was probably more like a little over that, maybe more in the 8 range.
Yeah, which I think is. Yeah, it's interesting because I had, kind of a thought at the beginning, that I kind of wanted to try to maintain, 10,000 a day or more. And for quite some time actually did, was averaging over the whole duration of my streak, over 10,000. And, then of course, I learned that sometimes you're not always in control of your own body. And so when you get hit with a crazy diagnosis, you do what you got to do. And there were, unfortunately for me, it took me a while to kind of accept what was going on with my body physically. The fatigue was pretty significant. And then of course, surgery and radiation and chemo and some of the other stuff. But so there were far too many minimum days. And I became very frustrated by it because on minimum days, there were days that I would struggle to even do the 2,500 meters, but I thought, okay, through it all, I was going to just continue to, in some ways, it kind of took over my whole thought process. And I was kind of glad for that because it gave me something really positive to focus on. And certain days where it would have been easy to just roll over and, just go back to sleep and think, why is this happening? But literally it was the thing that sometimes got me out of bed, got me on the machine. And then the 10-minute minimum, I was like, well, I'm already on the machine. Let's see if I could go 20 minutes. And then, well, I did 20. Let me see if I can go for 10 more and make it 30. And so I think right now my average across the 1,048 days is just about 8,600 meters all in, which is
that's pretty phenomenal, Dan. And just for myself, an easy correction. I don't know why I think my head is bigger and blurrier on the screen. It was definitely over 10. You were right. I had to think back because I had 6 years, and the streak was somewhere in those 6 years where I had a minimum of like a little over 4 million, and my biggest year was 5 million. Of course, if you're over 3,650,000, right? 365 times 10K,
right?
3.65 million, and I was like roughly between 4.2 and my 1 year. I was headed for about 4.8, 4.9, and I really put in some big volume days in April when I realized, oh, if I really push it, I can.
Right.
And that year I ended on purpose, 5 million meters. That was prior to the streak. But the point is that the streak, 2 years, 9 months, or 2 years, actually it was almost 3 years by the time the streak ended, definitely at least 11K or so per day, because I was well over 4 million in those years, 4.2, 4.5, so yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if we had, if I had spent, I know we traded a couple of emails earlier in the week about when I asked you hey, could want to do a Zoom call on Friday? And if I had had a little bit more time, today was kind of a stressful day for other non-rowing reasons. But if I had had more time and thought, I would have probably worn my Concept 2 10 million meter sweatshirt that I just picked up a few months back. And
congratulations.
And I know you've got all the paraphernalia, so I forget what your lifetime meters are up to now.
Yeah. Well, first I want you to tell us, whoever else eventually hears any of this, what you ended up doing today. But yes, I'm closing. I'm just a few days from 36 million on the rower.
Nice.
I'm between 19 and 20 on the bike now.
Yeah, now, and talk about that for a second too, because I find it fascinating. So you took delivery of your bike erg on what day?
Okay, I got it on April 17th, 2018, but for a couple of reasons between the assembly and getting my pedals, I had the right shoes, but I wanted, clip-in pedals.
Right.
I didn't actually ride until 2 days later, the 19th of April. And I haven't missed a day. And conveniently, I really didn't look at the days too often. I knew that today would be day 1000, but like day by day, I often don't know what day I'm on. But it's easy to remember the bike because conveniently for me, I'm exactly 60 days behind. So today, I haven't missed a day since I got the bike. Today is day 940. So I forget, January the 12th, I have to check, but it's in January. All being well, I never take too many things for granted. But I'm 60 days away from a 1,000-day streak on the bike.
Right. I'll tell you, I mean, I know we've shared some of these facts, and I've, and Concept 2 was gracious. They did an article and gave some honorable mention to both you and I a couple months back. I think it was the tail end of August when they wrote about their 1,000,000-meter club, and that was, of course, it was fun to be part of that. The other thing that really just really boggles my mind, in terms of just the way dates and numbers kind of seem to just to fall out at times. There was one of my, I compete with the sub-7 indoor rowing club, and I've been with them now since Alexandria. In fact, that's where I chatted with a few folks, but I met them all in Alexandria and thought like, hey, this would be something that would, I could really kind of get excited about. And of course, at the time, this was pre-diagnosis, and so I was rowing every challenge that there was and all sorts of crazy stuff. But at some point in the process, maybe a month or so ago, one of my sub-7 teammates, JC Crilly, or John Crilly, I don't know if you know him, but he posted a little clip online from Forrest Gump, which I'd forgotten about. I'd seen Forrest Gump only once, so it wasn't like I knew the movie inside and out, but it was a little clip when Forrest Gump, kind of just runs and runs and runs and runs for, forever. And then one day he just decides and he stops. And in the movie, he actually, Tom Hanks, of course, actually, he says, he's doing the voiceover, and he says something to the effect of, well, I ran for 3 years, 2 months, 14 days, and 16 hours. And then I got tired and decided it was time to go home. Or he says something like that. So I remember thinking, because people have asked me, like, hey, once you tie, that record from the guy in Canada, like, are you going to just stop? And I'm like, no, I'll just keep going until I get tired one day, or something legitimately prevents me from rowing. And, but when I saw that thing with Forrest Gump, I thought, well, let's be kind of clever. Let me see what happens if I plug in my start date of my streak, which was January 1st of 2018, and then just plug in all the, the what I'll say, the Tom Hanks or the Forrest Gump stats. So the 3 years, 2 months, 14. And do you know that actually takes me out exactly to my birthday next year?
Yeah, you were saying.
I mean, this is so bizarre to me, So anyway, so we'll have some fun with this. But like I say, one of the reasons that I wanted to do the call was certainly you've been a great, you were certainly the inspiration for me to start this, and a great sport along the way as I hit the various, few hundred meter or a few hundred days, 500 days, 600 days. And I'm sure my friends and family are probably sick of hearing me say at any given day what the count was, But one of the things that I just got a charge out of was the fact that, I've noticed in the last few months, I've noticed that there are some other folks who have streaks of their own going. And I don't know them really hardly at all. I mean, I know their names on Facebook, and I see there's one woman from Massachusetts who's up in the low 200s, if I recall correctly. She's around 220, maybe 230. There's a gentleman, I don't know where he lives. I think he's in a couple hundred days or approaching a couple hundred. And I just think it's fascinating, and so, I know one of the things I share with you as well is one of the things that I decided personally that I would do. And I guess you're the first person I'm going to owe you a t-shirt. Is I'm going to get a design done up for a t-shirt. And anytime somebody hits 1,000 meters on the erg, And, it's a healthy dose of the honor system, of course. But anytime I learn that somebody else hits 1,000 days on the RowErg, I'm going to make sure personally to send them a shirt. It doesn't matter where in the world they are. So you'll get the first one. And,
It's very kind of you.
I'll throw that out there so that if somebody's hearing this a couple of years from now, they could hold me to it and I'll send them a shirt.
Good of you. Look, we met, it's easy to count. We met 999 days ago. I hope it doesn't take another, right, from 1 plus 999 to 1,000 for me. And I hope it doesn't take that many more to get there again. But,
oh, right. Yeah. Because we met at Alexandria. And like you said, you started your streak the day you got home or that day?
Well, no, that's one of the incredible things. I mean, you were talking about coincidences before. No, the only day that you and I met, that was day one of my streak. I ended the streak at 10:48. I think I rode 10 out of the 15 days, not consecutive while I was away. I found a place where my son was living at the time, but I didn't row on, I rode on a Friday, that was day 10:48.
Right.
I flew overnight, didn't row on the weekend, but then I had a place Monday to Thursday. Anyway, so I did some rowing and I flew indirectly home, knowing that the race, it was just the right timing. It wasn't, initially planned that way. It was just the right timing for visiting my son. And, so I was able to make a detour, virtually didn't even cost more, to fly home via Alexandria. So doing the race and whatever warm up and cool down I did, not having rowed on the Saturday when I was traveling, that was day one. The race was day one. I didn't do a very good race,
right,
but that was day one. And that's the only day that I've seen you in person. And, who knew that would lead me to a second streak of 1,048 and that you would be where you're at,
Yeah, I mean, Alexandria was a lot of fun. I had done, a bunch of indoor races before that, but I felt like I was pretty healthy at the time. I was, I kind of live just above the 165 pound, normal cutoff. My body doesn't naturally want to be a lightweight, but, I'm not tall. And so, at 5'10", if I'm really focused on my nutrition and stuff, I could compete lightweight. But for the most part, my body kind of tends to live at, 168 to 170 pounds. And so most of my scores are heavyweight. And when I competed at Alexandria, I was heavyweight. And in fact, up until that point in time, I had never even attempted to, try to get to lightweight because it just didn't seem that important. I came in third in the 2000 in Alexandria in the 55 to 59 age group. And then I took second in the 500 meter, which I was kind of, happy about because I think that's before a lot of the CrossFitters jumped in and started crushing us. But
you've put up some very good times, Dan.
Yeah, and then I missed Long Beach, of course. Unfortunately, I missed Long Beach because of my surgery and stuff. But I did manage to row at the Crash B in 2019 and win a hammer as a lightweight. So I was thrilled to have that hammer.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So anyway, but so today I didn't do a whole lot. I mean, to be honest, sometimes life gets in the way of good intentions, and so I had a lot of good intentions about doing a 10 or 12K, road today, and unfortunately it got to be, middle of the afternoon. I think it was 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I was all stressed out, and I thought, you know what, I better stop what I'm doing, and at least get my minimum row in. And so I did. I kind of, and it was a terrible day outside today. It was cold and rainy. And so I actually dragged the erg just inside the door at a friend's office. And I sat down, set up a quick video camera, and I did, 10-minute row, which, I don't know, I think I did about 2,600 meters. And then as soon as I was done, of course, and then I finished, and I was actually more mad at myself. And I said, you know what, if I just did 10, so I sat down and did another 10-minute row on top of that. So in the end, I did, 5,000 meters, which is still on the low side. But, like I say, sometimes, as you well know, sometimes you just got to get the day in.
The challenges you faced, for the past roughly 2/3 of the streak made it just pretty incredible that you've gotten it done. It's a fantastic accomplishment. You should be really proud.
No, I am. I sometimes forget about it, but I will say it became a lot of fun in a way for me to have that to focus on, and probably the first difficult day was when I was admitted into the hospital for a multi-day stay to get some more aggressive chemo. And I had been telling the doctors for months, like, look, if I got to get admitted, I'm bringing my rowing machine with me if you can't provide one. And they kind of kept saying, oh, okay. I just don't think they thought I was serious. And so when I ever showed up to the front door of the hospital up in Boston with an erg in tow, and the security guy stopped me, and he's looking at me like, he says, no, you got to go across the street and check in there. And I said, no, my doctor said I got to check in here, come in the main. And he says, no, all vendors checking across the street. I said, I'm not a vendor. And he looked at the rowing machine. He goes, well, what are you selling? I said, I'm not selling anything. I go, this is my rowing machine. I said, I'm going upstairs for treatment. And he just looked at me, and he didn't say anything. It was, by that point, I was like halfway into the door. And, but, after that, it became kind of routine where I'd show up, for each admission after that. And in a way, it was kind of nice because they were like, oh, the rower's back, Exactly. So who knows what the future holds, but I'm I couldn't be more pleased to share day 1048 with a true sportsman from Canada. And
you're too kind.
Just wanted to thank you for giving me initial motivation to do this madness.
I'm genuinely pleased. I'm really honored you made me any part of it. I know it happened as just kind of a thing, a neat idea, but you turned it into something very special. And nobody cheering harder today and tomorrow for you every day going forward. 1049 is a very nice number.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny too that that 1048 fell on a Friday the 13th. I was like, I became, as the week was going on, I became more and more focused about every little thing I was doing. The other day I went to do some work and I went to start up a chainsaw, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna wait until after the record's done.
You don't, because you've rowed so many places outside and all that. You don't want to see a black cat going under the rower.
Oh, you laugh, but the other day I was rowing in my folks' garage with the door open, and sure enough, a black cat. I mean, here it was. I thought this is unbelievable. So anyhow, I appreciate your time, and congratulations on your 1,000 days second time around. And I'll shoot you a little screenshot, of course, tomorrow after I eclipse 1048, but that becomes a future mark for somebody else to chase one day.
Well, that's fine. You've chased me down and done a great job of it, and let everybody keep chasing an even bigger and bigger number. Keep it going.
All right, great. Hey, Stan, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm sure we'll chat again soon.
Pleasure's mine. Take care, Dan.
All righty, see ya.
Ciao.